Varlon Prime was dying. The sky, once gold and bright, was now a storm of burning metal and shattered ships. Great fires spread across its cities, eating through crystal towers and steel domes. The oceans boiled beneath falling debris, and the air itself carried the taste of ash and fear. The Krith Dominion had come like a nightmare. No warning, no mercy, only fire. For weeks, the coalition had fought back. Fleets from a dozen worlds stood together for the first time in centuries. The insectoid Zul, the scaled Thal, the glowing Ireni, all united under one banner. Their combined strength should have been enough to hold the line, but it was. The Krith were too strong, too fast, too ruthless. Now their ships filled the sky, black daggers gliding across the clouds, raining plasma on every living thing below. Every defense satellite had been turned to dust. Every capital ship had fallen silent. The proud coalition, once the greatest power in this sector, was being wiped away like sand in a storm. And in the heart of that dying world, deep within the old council chambers, the survivors gathered. The great hall, carved from stone older than most civilizations, was now half collapsed. Smoke poured through cracks in the walls, and the floor trembled with each distant explosion. The remaining leaders, once proud and regal, now looked broken, their robes torn, their eyes hollow. Ambassador Threx of the Thal sat slumped against a column, his blue scales dulled by soot. "We cannot hold another day," he whispered. "The Krith will land soon. They will finish what they started." Elder Myron of the Ireni hovered beside him, her body pulsing dimly with light. "Then we must flee. There are still transports." "There's nowhere left to run," interrupted General Vosk, his voice gravel and despair. The thick-armed warrior of the Kreth species looked up at the cracked ceiling. "The Dominion burns every world they touch. They follow until nothing remains." Silence followed. Even the wind outside seemed to hesitate. At the far end of the room, a figure stirred, old, thin, and cloaked in dark silk. It was High Seer Ulthura of the Thal, keeper of forgotten histories. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and cold. "There is one thing left," she said. Every eye turned toward her. General Vosk frowned. "If you speak of surrender—" "I speak of summoning," she interrupted. Her golden eyes glimmered in the dim light. "Something ancient, something forbidden." Myron's glow flickered. "You cannot mean them." The seer nodded slowly. "Yes, the humans." A murmur rippled through the chamber, a sound of disbelief, horror, and awe. The humans, the forgotten monsters. Stories of them still haunted children's dreams, tales of a species born in war, who had once walked among the stars with fire in their hands and iron in their hearts. They had fought gods, they had shattered empires, and when the galaxy had begged for peace, the humans had simply vanished, leaving behind ruins and warnings. "They were exiled," hissed Vosk, "for crimes beyond measure, for destroying entire star systems in their wars." Ulthura met his gaze, "And yet they won every one of them." A heavy silence followed. Threx's voice trembled. "We made a pact never to call them again. They were too dangerous, too wild." Ulthura turned toward the great circular table in the center of the hall, its surface cracked and burned. She placed a trembling hand upon it. "Dangerous?" she said softly. "Yes, but what is danger compared to extinction?" Another explosion shook the hall. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the sky flashed red as the Krith bombardment drew closer. Vosk clenched his fists. "You would doom us all to save us." "No," Ulthura said. "I would remind them." She pulled something from beneath her robes, a small black device, shaped like a triangle covered in strange markings. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The others recoiled at the sight. "That's human technology," whispered Myron. "Where did you get it?" "From their ruins," said Ulthura. "Long ago, when I was young, I studied their language, their machines. I kept one relic, a transmitter, a beacon." She looked around the room, meeting every fearful gaze. "It was meant to never be used, but if we die here, our promise means nothing." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the distant thunder of war. Then slowly, General Vosk stepped forward. "If we do this," he said, "we can never undo it. If the humans answer, they will not come as saviors." "They will come as what they have always been," Ulthura said quietly. "War." Another explosion tore through the sky. The walls shook violently and the floor cracked. A beam of sunlight burst through the hole in the roof, falling directly on the device in her hands. Ulthura took a deep breath. "Forgive me," she whispered to no one in particular. Then she pressed her palm against the relic. A deep hum filled the air, low and powerful. The markings on the device flared to life, glowing red, then white. The light spread across the floor, forming ancient human symbols that none of the aliens could read. Outside, the Krith fleet paused. Something in the void answered. The transmission shot through the stars, faster than any known signal, carrying with it a single pulse, a frequency band for 10,000 years. The council chamber fell silent once more. The device went dark. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then across the sky, every Krith ship shuddered. Their sensors flickered, their systems screamed warnings. A shadow passed over Varlon Prime, not a ship, not a storm, something else. A distortion in space itself. Deep in the static of every communicator, a voice broke through. Harsh, cold, human. This is UNS Retribution. Distress signal received, requesting target designation. The chamber erupted in stunned silence. Myron's glow dimmed to near darkness. They heard us, she whispered. Threx fell to his knees. Stars save us, he breathed. They actually heard. Ulthura closed her eyes. No, she said softly, they remembered. Outside, the Krith fleet shifted formation, confused, searching. The stars themselves seemed to bend and tremble. Somewhere far away, engines older than empires roared to life. And in that moment, that single breathless moment, hope returned to Varlon Prime. Not gentle hope, not kind. The kind that burns. For a long moment after the voice came, no one in the council chamber spoke. The words still echoed through the comms, rough and human, filled with something no machine or alien could copy, emotion. Cold, focused, alive. This is UNS Retribution. Distress signal received, requesting target designation. The line went silent again. The air felt heavy, pressing against every chest. General Vosk stared at the smoking device in the center of the floor. His voice was hoarse. You've done it. You've truly done it. High Cyril Thura stood motionless, her face half hidden by shadow. The light of the dying sky shone through the cracks of the hall and reflected in her eyes. It had to be done, she said. Myron's glowing form trembled. Do you understand what you've brought back? The humans do not answer pleas for peace. They only answer for war. They will not come, Threx said suddenly, trying to convince himself. It's been 10,000 years. Their kind is gone, dust among the stars. But even as he spoke, something deep in the earth began to hum, a slow vibration that rattled the bones. The very air changed. The sound grew deeper until every being on Varlon could feel it in their hearts. And then the sky split open. The clouds turned red as a burning line tore across the heavens, stretching from horizon to horizon. Space itself seemed to fold, twist, and bleed light. Every sensor in the Krith fleet overloaded. Their commanders barked orders, but their systems went dead one by one. What is this? Snarled Warlord Draxon, the Krith fleet leader, his claws digging into the armrest of his throne. His command ship floated at the center of the burning sky, surrounded by thousands of war vessels. Find the source. It's not a weapon, one of his officers screamed. It's a tear in space itself. From the rift came a blinding light, then a shadow huge, metallic, and wrong in every beautiful way. The Krith prided themselves on the perfection of their ships, curved, elegant, quiet. But this thing was ugly. A slab of gray metal, bristling with cannons and scars. Its hull bore marks of battles long forgotten, entire continents etched into its armor. Its engines roared like thunder. Letters burned along its side in a strange, blocky script. UNS Retribution. It was followed by two more ships, each larger than anything the Krith had ever built. UNS Iron Will, UNS Vengeance. They didn't glide through space, they marched. Warlord Draxon's eyes widened. What are those? The answer came moments later, over every open channel, in a voice that silenced the stars. Identify yourselves. This system is under human protection. Down on Varlon Prime, the survivors stared upward through smoke and fire. Threx dropped to his knees, his claws trembling. By the stars, he whispered. They're real, they came. The humans had returned. Ulthura watched as streaks of white light crossed the sky, human fighters, dropping like spears into the storm of Krith ships above. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. Their answer is war, she said. Myron turned to her, glowing faintly. Do you know what you've started, Seer? The Krith will not survive this, but neither might we. Ulthura didn't answer. She just looked up, her golden eyes reflecting the human fleet's light. Above them, the battle had begun. The Krith were ready for anything except this. When their ships fired, the humans did not dodge. They advanced through the storm of plasma and missiles, shields glowing red, armor melting but holding. The first human volley hit like the fist of a god. Mass driver cannons spat metal slugs the size of shuttles, each moving faster than light could blink. The slugs punched through Krith destroyers and didn't stop, tearing through 3 more before slowing. Then came the missiles, not guided by light or code, but by instinct. They twisted mid-flight, avoiding flak and countermeasures as if alive. When they hit, the explosions lit up space like small suns. The Krith tried to regroup. Their formation broke. Their precision dissolved into panic. "Focus fire," Draxon roared, but his command ship shuddered as another railgun round punched through its shields. Sparks showered across his command deck. "These are primitive weapons," one officer screamed. "Ballistic, nuclear, it makes no sense." And then came the words that would echo through Krith history forever. "Primitive doesn't mean weak." The voice came from the Retribution, Admiral Karen Holt herself. Her face appeared on intercepted Krith channels, calm and cold. "You wanted a war," she said. "You got one." On the surface, every being felt it, the tremor of war in the skis. The alien defenders looked up to see fire raining down, and for the first time since the invasion began, those flames were not theirs. Threx stared as a Krith cruiser fell from orbit, breaking apart in the clouds. "They're winning," he said, disbelief filling his voice. "They're actually." He didn't finish. The shockwave hit, shattering what was left of the council hall. Debris rained down and Myron pulled Threx to cover. "They fight like no one else," she whispered. "Like they've done this 1,000 times before." "They have," Ulthura said. "This is what they are." Above them, the Krith fleet collapsed. Dozens of ships drifted lifeless, burning from the inside. Human vessels moved through the wreckage like wolves among carcasses, finishing any ship still daring to move. And yet, amidst the chaos, something more terrifying was coming. A second rift opened, larger, deeper, its edges glowing white-hot. Through it came another wave of human ships, each bearing different names: Endurance, Steel Heart, Dauntless. Entire carrier groups followed, deploying swarms of drones and fighters. The humans didn't just come to save Varlon, they came to end the Krith. The Dominion's last line of defense formed around Warlord Draxon's flagship. The Krith gathered every remaining vessel, a wall of black steel and defiance. "We will not bow," Draxon bellowed. "We are the Krith Dominion, no savage relic will." A flash of light cut across his bridge window. The Retribution had fired. A single railgun round. No sound, no warning, just a beam of kinetic death. Draxon's words stopped mid-breath as his ship split in half. The explosion painted the void in crimson. For a moment, everything was silent. The battle was over. On the surface, as the fires dimmed and the bombardment ended, a strange quiet settled over Varlon Prime. The smoke parted, and through the ash-choked clouds, a massive shadow moved across the sky, the Retribution. The humans did not speak. They did not demand thanks. They simply hovered there, silent sentinels over a world on its knees. Threx looked to Ulthura, voice breaking. "You've doomed us all. They will never leave now." Ulthura shook her head. "No," she whispered. "They'll leave, but the galaxy will never be the same." In orbit, Admiral Holt watched the wreckage drift into darkness. Her crew waited for orders. She looked out at the dying planet below. "Transmit this to all channels," she said. "This is humanity. You came for the weak. You'll find none here anymore." The stars flickered as her fleet moved forward, engines glowing bright. And far away across the galaxy, those who listened trembled. The humans had returned, and war had come with them. The fires of Varlon Prime still burned when the second human fleet arrived. From orbit, the planet was a scar. Oceans turned black, cities turned to glass, and clouds choked with the smoke of war. Yet in that ruin, something had survived: hope, the kind that came wrapped in steel and thunder. The UNS Retribution floated above the planet like a silent god, her hull scarred and pitted from battle. Around her, dozens of ships formed up, destroyers, carriers, and cruisers, each bearing the same proud insignia: a blue Earth encircled by 13 stars, humanity's mark. And beyond them, the void shimmered once more. A new fleet emerged, not just ships this time, but armies, massive transporters bristling with guns, mobile foundries mining ships, repair docks, an entire war machine that moved as one. The Iron Legion had arrived. To the surviving coalition species, the sight was both terrifying and beautiful. They had called for help, they had summoned monsters, and the monsters had come. On the command deck of the Retribution, Admiral Karen Holt stood at the viewport, staring down at the broken planet below. Her face was pale, her eyes sharp and tired. "Status report," she said. "Enemy fleet destroyed," replied Commander Reyes, her second-in-command. "Krith resistance in orbit is 0. Ground forces still active in some zones, mostly in the northern continent. Coalition survivors are scattered across the equatorial cities." "Casualty estimates?" Holt asked quietly. "Unknown, millions, maybe more." The Admiral said nothing. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Then she turned to the tactical map, a glowing projection of Varlon's surface, dotted with red enemy markers and blue friendlies. "They want a genocide," she murmured. "They'll learn what war really looks like." She straightened, her voice hardening. "Deploy the 3rd and 5th Marine Divisions. Clear the ground. No quarter for the Krith. Anyone raising a white flag, process and hold. Everyone else." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. "Understood, ma'am," Reyes said. The command deck came alive. Orders flashed across screens, voices filled the air, and the Retribution turned its great guns toward the planet. Below, the ground shook as the human dropships fell through the clouds. They came in silence at first, streaks of fire cutting across the sky. Then came the roar, 1,000 sonic booms as pods slammed into the earth. Each one cracked open like an egg, spilling armored soldiers into the smoke and rubble. They moved with purpose, fast, silent, deadly. Their armor was dull black, their visors glowing crimson. Every movement was precise, every shot was clean. To the alien survivors, they looked less like soldiers and more like the embodiment of vengeance itself. From a shattered tower, a wounded Thal soldier watched one of the humans walk past, tall, broad-shouldered, rifle in hand. The human stopped for a moment, scanning the horizon through the haze of fire. When he spoke, his voice was calm, low, and utterly sure. "Contact ahead. Hostiles, move on my mark." And then the Thal understood. These weren't saviors, these were predators unleashed. The Krith forces on the ground tried to fight. They had numbers, armor, and fury, but none of it mattered. The first human assault hit them like a tidal wave. Rail rifles tore through their exosuits. Explosives shaped like coins turned tanks into twisted heaps of metal. Drones swarmed the skis, marking targets with beams of light before vaporizing them with precision strikes. For every human that fell, 10 Krith followed. A Krith warlord, massive, armored in spikes and bone, roared across the battlefield, swinging a plasma halberd the size of a shuttle door. A single human turned to face him, rifle empty. The soldier dropped it and drew a blade, simple steel, edges glowing red from heat. The alien swung. The human dodged, slid under the blade, and drove his sword through the Krith's chest. The warlord fell, eyes wide. The human stood over him, breathing hard, visor reflecting the fires around him. "You started this," the soldier said softly. "We finish it." Then he moved on. In orbit, the fleet tightened formation. The Iron Legion's carriers launched new waves of ships, each one sleek, fast, and deadly. The Krith reinforcements jumped into the system, but they never stood a chance. The human battleships didn't wait for introductions. They fired the moment the enemy arrived. Columns of plasma fire and rail slugs cut through the void. Krith ships exploded in sequence, their formation disintegrating before it could even stabilize. The battle lasted 15 minutes, then there was nothing left. Commander Reyes stared at her display. "All enemy vessels destroyed, Admiral, it's over." Admiral Holt didn't smile, she only nodded. "No, it's begun. Send out the signal. The Dominion needs to understand what happens when they come for our friends." The message went out across the stars, carried on every frequency in every language. "This is the United Nations Space Command. The Krith Dominion has committed genocide on a protected world. Retribution is delivered. We are watching, we are coming." The signal echoed through 1,000 systems. Some dismissed it as myth. Others, those who remembered the old wars, trembled. And far away in the black heart of the Dominion, the Krith High Council gathered in fear. They had heard stories of humans before, savage, reckless, unstoppable, but they had believed them dead, extinct. Now the truth hung over them like a blade. The humans were alive, and they were angry. On Varlon Prime, the smoke began to clear. The surviving coalition soldiers emerged from the rubble, blinking at the new light cutting through the haze. Human medics moved among them, patching wounds, sharing water, helping the weak to their feet. For all their fire and fury, the humans knew mercy, but only for the innocent. High Cyril Thura stood on the steps of the ruined council hall, watching as a human shuttle landed nearby. Its doors opened, and a squad stepped out. At their head was a tall woman in gray armor, her short hair streaked with silver. Admiral Karen Holt. The human leader approached the alien elder with steady steps. The two stood face to face, one ancient, one weary, both changed. Ulthura bowed her head. "You came," she said softly. Holt looked around at the broken city. "You called." The alien met her gaze. "And now?" The Admiral's eyes hardened. "Now we make sure they never do this again." She turned to her troops. "Prepare the planet for stabilization. Deploy relief teams. Any remaining Krith presence, remove it." Her words carried no hatred, no cruelty, just finality. As the humans worked, the survivors whispered to each other. Some called them heroes. Others called them monsters. But all agreed on one thing: the galaxy would never be the same again. When the sun rose over Varlon Prime the next day, its light shone on a world reborn in fire. And above it, the human ships still waited, gray and cold, like sentinels forged from vengeance itself. The Iron Legion had arrived. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the stars themselves seemed afraid. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than the thunder. Varlon Prime was quiet now, too quiet. Its cities were nothing but skeletons of glass and steel. The sky was no longer filled with fire, only the faint glow of orbiting human ships casting shadows over the ruined world. For the first time in weeks, there were no screams, no explosions, only the wind. And yet the war was far from over. Humanity had arrived not to win one battle, but to end all of them. Admiral Karen Holt stood in the command center of the UNS Retribution, staring at the hollow display before her. It showed a map of the galaxy, red zones spreading like infection marks where the Krith Dominion ruled. Each point of light represented a world that had burned under their claws. Dozens of planets, billions of dead. Her jaw tightened. Commander Reyes approached, her expression grim. "The Krith are regrouping, ma'am. Long-range scans show their fleets are mobilizing near the rim. They're preparing for full retaliation." "Let them," Holt said. "We'll show them what retaliation really means." She reached out and touched one of the red points on the map. It flared, and data streamed beside it, a Krith shipyard world called Vader IX. "Target this one first," Holt said. "They built their war machines there. Time they learn what fear feels like." Reyes nodded and gave the order. "All ships set course for Vader IX. Jump in 20. The Iron Legion began to move. Across the stars, in the dark heart of the Dominion, the Krith High Council gathered. They were warriors, creatures of claw and bone and hatred. For centuries they had ruled without challenge, but now their pride was cracked. Before them floated a hologram of their fallen fleet, a graveyard of twisted metal, all destroyed by 3 human ships. 3. "This cannot be," hissed Warlord Kareth, slamming a clawed fist on the table. "They are a primitive race. Their weapons are old. They use metal slugs instead of plasma." "They destroyed 4 fleets in less than a cycle," another counselor rasped. "Their tactics are madness. They do not retreat. They do not stop." The Supreme Overlord rose, towering above them all, his voice like thunder. "Then we will burn their worlds," he snarled. "Find their home, find this earth." A nervous silence followed. One of the younger counselors spoke softly, almost shaking. "My lord, we do not know where their homeworld is. Our records show nothing. They erased themselves from the galactic maps long ago." The Overlord's eyes blazed. "Then find them before they find us." But it was already too late. The human fleet dropped out of warp above Vader IX. and the planet's defense grid lit up instantly. Dozens of orbital cannons locked onto the intruders. Thousands of ships, sleek, black, and burning with blue energy, rose from the shipyards to defend their world. To the Krith, this was an unbreakable fortress. To humanity, it was a target. "Engage," Holt said. The void erupted. The Retribution's railguns thundered, each shot shaking space itself. Kinetic slugs screamed across the void, ripping through the first wave of Krith ships like paper. Human carriers launched swarms of fighters that danced through enemy lines, dodging plasma fire and returning with missiles that burned brighter than suns. The Krith answered with everything they had. Their energy cannons tore through the first human destroyer, splitting it apart. Dozens more fired, painting the dark with light. But the humans didn't slow. They charged. From the bridge, Holt watched the chaos unfold, her heart steady. "Bring the Retribution forward," she ordered. "Close the distance. If they want to fight, they'll get it up close." "Ma'am, that's suicide," Reyes warned. Holt's lips curved into a thin, fierce smile. "Not for us." The Retribution surged ahead, engines roaring, plowing through the enemy line like a storm through leaves. Human frigates followed, firing broadside after broadside. One Krith dreadnought tried to ram, Holt ordered a counterstrike. The railgun fired, the dreadnought ceased to exist. From the planet below, the Krith workers watched in horror as their sky turned red. Fragments of their own ships rained down like meteors, and the atmosphere burned. In the Central Command Citadel, General Zarn, commander of Vader IX, watched the live feed from orbit, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "It cannot be," he whispered. "They're tearing through us like—" The ceiling exploded. Human drop pods crashed through the roof, and armored Marines poured into the room. Their visors glowed red through the smoke. One of them stepped forward, weapon raised. "General Zarn," he asked. The Krith bared his teeth. "I am the blade of the Dominion." The human tilted his head. "Not anymore." One shot, clean, final. And the Dominion lost its blade. Hours later, Vader IX was silent. The shipyards burned. The forges were gone. The planet's factories were nothing but molten slag. Admiral Holt watched from orbit as the fires spread, reflecting in her eyes. "Status?" she asked. "All hostiles eliminated," Reyes reported. "We've seized their databanks. We know where the next stronghold is." Holt nodded. "Good, send it to the fleet. We move in 6 hours." Reyes hesitated. "Ma'am, what about survivors?" Holt looked at her, expression unreadable. "Civilians." "Yes, ma'am." There was a pause. The Admiral's voice was quiet but cold as space. "They were building warships here. There are no civilians." Reyes said nothing more. News of Vader IX spread faster than any ship could fly. Across the galaxy, the Krith Dominion trembled. Worlds that had never known fear began to whisper in dread. The humans didn't conquer, they erased. Every message they sent carried the same line. "We are not here for power, we are here for justice." To some, it was a warning. To others, a death sentence. And the more the Dominion fought back, the more it broke. Every fleet they sent was destroyed. Every stronghold burned. Every world they had enslaved was freed or turned to ashes. The humans never stayed long. They came, they struck, and they left silence behind. Back aboard the Retribution, Admiral Holt stood alone, watching the stars drift by. Her reflection looked tired, old before its time. Reyes approached quietly. "You should rest, ma'am." "I can't," Holt said softly. "Not yet, not while they're still out there." Reyes hesitated, then asked, "When does it end?" Holt looked out into the endless dark. "When they stop hunting the weak," she said. "When no one fears the night anymore." Her gaze hardened. "Until then, we are the night." Far beyond their fleet, in the hidden corners of the galaxy, alien races listened to the growing storm and trembled. The Krith had been the galaxy's predators, but now they were prey. And somewhere, deep in the void, a single truth began to echo through every corner of space. Never summon the humans, never make them angry. Because when they come, they do not bring peace. They bring reckoning. And it had only just begun. The invasion of Krith worlds did not begin with fanfare. It began with silence. Then came the roar. Across the black edge of space, human ships descended on enemy planets, not as conquerors, but as storms. The sky of every Krith world darkened under the shadows of drop pods and gunships. Whole atmospheres burned as the Iron Legion fell like rain. To the Krith, it was unthinkable. No species had ever dared to invade their soil. No one had ever made groundfall. Until now. The first planet was Rockthal, the Dominion's oldest fortress world. Its mountains were carved into weapon foundries, its valleys filled with marching legions. For centuries, its surface had never been touched by an enemy's foot. That changed the moment the humans arrived. From orbit, the UNS Dauntless led the assault. Its rail cannons fired in rhythmic bursts, tearing open the planet's defense grid. The sky turned red, the ground trembled, and then silence as if the planet itself held its breath. Thousands of black pods broke through the clouds, each leaving a trail of fire. The Krith soldiers watched them fall small metal specks and laughed. "They are fools," said their commander. "So few, they send insects to face giants." But when the pods hit, the laughter stopped. The impacts shook mountains. Steel plates split apart, and from the smoke stepped figures in gray armor, tall, broad, faces hidden behind black visors. Their weapons hummed, cold and patient. And then they opened fire. The first wave of Krith troops charged, screaming, massive, armored with claws that could tear through stone. They moved fast, but the humans moved faster. Every shot found its mark. Every motion was deliberate. Human squads worked as one body, covering, advancing, killing. They didn't yell or boast. They fought in silence, their comms filled only with clipped orders. "Left flank clear. Reloading. Advance on my mark." They spoke like they'd done this 1,000 times, because they had. The Krith had fought disciplined armies before, but this was something else. This was methodical fury. When one human fell, 3 more stepped over the body and kept firing. When Krith tanks rolled in, orbital strikes vaporized them. When the enemy retreated, drones hunted them through canyons and ruins. There was no mercy, only precision. In the Krith command bunker, General Varen stared at the battlefield map in horror. "Impossible," he hissed. "They are outnumbered 10 to 1. An aide trembled beside him. "General, their ships control the sky, their soldiers are just flesh and bone," Varen roared. But even as he spoke, the bunker's walls shuddered. The lights flickered. A single drop pod slammed into the courtyard outside, crushing 2 guards beneath it. The doors opened. And humanity walked in. A single Marine stepped through the smoke, his armor marked with soot and blood. The Krith guards rushed forward, roaring, and were dead before they reached him. The Marine moved like a storm, each shot exact, each motion calm. When he reached the command room, Varen stood waiting with a plasma blade in hand. "You dare invade our world?" Varen snarled. The human tilted his head slightly. His voice came through the helmet's speakers, cold and level. "You burned ours." The Krith lunged. The human sidestepped, caught the alien's wrist, and drove his combat knife into Varen's throat. The general fell without a sound. The Marine looked down at the body for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his wrist, activating his comm. "Objective complete. Krith command neutralized." The voice on the other end was calm, steady, and human. "Copy that, fall back to the LZ. The planet is ours." By the end of the day, Rockthal was silent. The Iron Legion stood among the ruins, black smoke curling into the red sky. The planet's forges, once symbols of the Dominion's power, were cold. Admiral Karen Holt watched from orbit as the human flag rose over the captured fortress. She didn't smile. There was no victory here, only necessity. "Status report," she said quietly. "All enemy resistance eliminated," Commander Reyes replied. "Surface secure, casualty count minimal." Holt nodded. "Transmit this to the fleet." Her eyes hardened as she looked at the burning planet below. "Let the Dominion know we're not done." The news spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, the Krith slaves whispered of what they'd seen. The unstoppable gray soldiers who came from the stars, who fought without fear and vanished without warning. To the free worlds, humanity became a symbol, terrifying, yes, but also something more, a promise. The weak had called, and the strong had answered. The Krith called them monsters. The oppressed called them saviors. The truth was somewhere in between. Aboard the Retribution, the War Council met once more. Reyes stood beside a map showing dozens of Krith worlds marked in red. "The Dominion is fracturing," she said. "Their leaders are dead or hiding, but their fleets are still massive. They'll regroup." "Then we hit them again," Holt said. "No hesitation." General Vosk of the Kreth, one of the surviving coalition leaders, stood at the far end of the room. His scaled hands trembled as he spoke. "You've already broken them," he said. "They'll surrender soon. You've done enough." Holt turned to him, her eyes hard. "Enough. Tell that to the children they burned alive on Varlon. Tell that to the cities they turned to ash." Vosk lowered his head. Reyes hesitated. "Admiral, what happens after, when the Krith are gone?" Holt looked out the viewport where the stars stretched endlessly into the dark. "Then we go home," she said quietly, "and we pray we never have to come back." On the surface of Rockthal, the last human platoon prepared to depart. One of the soldiers, Sergeant Kyle Reeves, stood at the edge of a ruined canyon, looking down at what had once been a Krith city. Thousands of structures, now dust. He spoke softly to himself. "We always come too late." Beside him, another Marine adjusted her helmet. "At least we came." Reeves nodded. "Yeah," he said, "at least we came." Their shuttle arrived, engines roaring. They boarded in silence. As it lifted, the wind swept across the ruins, carrying the faint echo of their march, the sound of human boots on alien soil. It was a sound the galaxy would never forget. Later, in the quiet halls of the Coalition's rebuilt council, the leaders of the surviving races gathered once again. They spoke in hushed voices of what they had witnessed. "They saved us," one said. "They destroyed everything," said another. High Cyril Thura listened, saying nothing. Her eyes drifted toward the stars beyond the window to the faint glimmer of a human warship fatting into the distance. "They are both," she whispered, "saviors and destroyers, the fire that saves and the fire that consumes." The others fell silent, because in their hearts they all knew one truth. They had called for help, and humanity had answered. That night, in the darkness between stars, a single message echoed once more from the fleet of Earth. "This is the United Nations Space Command. The weak will not fall again. The guilty will never sleep." And in 1,000 hidden corners of the galaxy, the Krith trembled because they knew what was coming next. Humanity had made groundfall, and the war was no longer theirs. It began not with fire, but with silence. The Krith Dominion, once the most feared empire in the galaxy, woke one day to find their fleets gone. Their great shipyards lay cold. Their command worlds were shadows. And above those shadows, the humans waited. The UNS Retribution stood at the edge of the Krith home system like a silent blade. Its engines hummed with restrained fury. Its hull bore the scars of 100 battles, but it still moved with the calm power of something unstoppable. Admiral Karen Holt watched from the bridge as the final phase of the campaign unfolded. Her voice was steady, cold as the void. "Report." Commander Reyes stood beside her. "All Krith colonies secured, resistance minimal. The Dominion fleet is regrouping near their homeworld, Karnath Prime." Holt's gaze darkened. "Then we finish it." Her voice carried across the command deck. "All ships prepare for final approach. The Dominion dies today." No one cheered, no one smiled. The crew simply nodded and moved, silent, focused, professional. They knew what was coming. They had been fighting for months without rest, without hesitation. This was not a war for glory. It was a war for justice, for every world that had burned under Krith fire. And now justice was coming home. Karnath Prime was a fortress world. Its atmosphere shimmered with layered shields. Thousands of defense satellites orbited its surface like thorns. The Krith called it the heart of the Dominion. But when the human fleet arrived, that heart began to falter. Dozens of ships emerged from warp space, gray hulls marked with the insignia of the United Nations Space Command. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, and dreadnoughts. They came without banners or warning. The Krith fleet moved to intercept, thousands of ships, sleek and deadly, roaring toward the invaders. Admiral Holt watched their approach, eyes hard. Fire at will. The void exploded. Railgun slugs screamed across the darkness. Missiles burned through the black, cutting arcs of light. Krith ships disintegrated in waves, their shields failing against human firepower. The Krith responded with everything they had. Their plasma cannons lit the darkness. Human ships took hit after hit, some shattered, some fell silent, but the fleet didn't stop. They never stopped. On the bridge of the Retribution, the lights flickered as another impact rocked the ship. Sparks burst from the ceiling, alarms howled. "Forward shields failing," shouted an officer. "Reroute power," Holt said calmly. "We hold the line." Reyes turned to her. "Ma'am, the Krith fleet is closing." "Good," Holt said. "Let them come." Her voice lowered to a whisper. "Let them see what happens when you push humanity to the edge." From his command citadel on Carnath Prime, Warlord Threxen, the supreme overlord of the Krith, watched the battle unfold through a shimmering projection. His claws dug into the control console. "They come for me," he growled. "For us, they dare invade our home." His advisor trembled beside him. "My lord, the outer fleet has fallen. They are breaking through the orbital lines." Threxen turned, his four burning eyes full of hatred. "Then ready the planetary cannons. I will drown them in fire." Moments later, the surface of Carnath Prime lit up with plasma storms. Gigantic energy beams lanced upward, cutting through space. A single blast struck the UNS Dauntless, tearing it apart in a blinding flash. "Direct hit," cried the Krith technician. Threxen grinned a sharp, toothy smile. "See, they bleed like all others." But his smile died when a voice broke through the interference, clear and cold, carried on a human frequency. "You've had your turn," said Admiral Holt. "Now it's ours." The next moment, hundreds of kinetic rods, human-made rods from God, fell from orbit. Each one struck the planet with the force of a small nuke. The ground split. Cities turned to dust. The planetary cannons fell silent. The Krith Fortress world screamed. Down below, the sky burned. Carnath Prime shook as explosions rolled across its continents. Krith soldiers ran through collapsing streets, their armor scorched and useless. Entire mountain ranges broke apart as orbital fire rained from above. And then the humans came. Drop pods slammed into the surface, scattering like meteors. From them emerged soldiers in black and gray armor, rifles gleaming in the firelight. They moved through the ruins like ghosts. The Krith tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. Every time they regrouped, a drone strike tore them apart. Every time they hid, thermal scans found them. There was no safe place, no mercy. A Krith warrior, bleeding and desperate, fell to his knees before a human marine. "Please," he rasped in broken English. "No more." The marine stared down at him for a long time, visor glowing red. Then slowly he lowered his weapon. "Don't beg me," the soldier said quietly. "Beg your leaders." He turned away, leaving the alien trembling in the dust. In the Krith citadel, chaos reigned. The walls shook with each bombardment. Flames spread through the corridors. Guards lay dead by the doors. And in the heart of it all, Warlord Threxen stood alone, staring up at the sky through a shattered roof. He could see them, the human ships, hanging in orbit like judgment itself. A shadow fell over him. Admiral Karen Holt stepped through the smoke, her rifle aimed, her boots crunching against the broken stone. "Threxen of the Krith," she said, "your war ends here." The alien snarled, raising a massive plasma blade. "You think you can kill a god?" Holt didn't flinch. "I've killed plenty." He charged. The fight was fast and brutal, Threxen's blade slicing through air, Holt dodging, striking, rolling beneath his blows. Sparks flew as steel met plasma. Finally, she found her moment, drove her knife through his chest, and pulled the trigger on her pistol. The warlord of the Krith fell with a roar that shook the chamber. "Not gods," Holt said quietly, standing over him. "Just murderers." Hours later, the battle was over. The Krith Dominion was gone. Their fleets were wreckage, their armies were dust, their world burned beneath human fire. From orbit, the Retribution looked down on the once mighty empire, now nothing more than silence. Reyes turned to Holt. "It's done, ma'am." The Admiral didn't answer right away. She stared at the burning planet, her reflection in the glass. "No," she said softly, "it's never done, but it's over for now." Reyes swallowed hard. "What should we tell the coalition?" Holt turned away from the viewport. "Tell them the galaxy is safe again, and tell them to remember why." She paused, then added, her voice low and final. Because humans remember what monsters look like, and we refuse to become prey. When word of the Krith's fall spread, the galaxy trembled. Some celebrated, some mourned, but all of them remembered. From that day on, in every council and every fleet, one rule was carved into stone. Never summon the humans, because when humanity comes, the war doesn't end until they say it does. The Dominion was gone, and the stars were quiet once more. But the silence was different now. It was the silence of fear and of peace bought with fire. And in that silence, the UNS Retribution turned toward the dark, engines glowing bright as it prepared to leave. "Mission complete," Holt whispered. "Retribution heading home." And somewhere in the endless night between stars, the galaxy took a breath, knowing that humanity had won. But also knowing this: if war ever came again, they would return. The war was over. But peace was not the same as before. The galaxy had changed. Entire civilizations whispered in fear of the name that once meant nothing to them, human. Where the Krith Dominion had ruled for centuries, only ruins now floated through the void. Burned planets, empty fortresses, silent ships drifting without power. Their empire had been wiped clean from every map, erased by a vengeance that came from the stars. And in that quiet aftermath, the galaxy found itself staring into the dark and wondering if it would ever truly be free again. In the days after the fall of the Krith, Admiral Karen Holt sat alone in her quarters aboard the UNS Retribution. The ship hummed quietly around her, a massive living machine still carrying the echoes of battle. She had seen victory before, but never one that felt so heavy. The walls of her room were lined with names, not of enemies, but of her crew. The ones who hadn't come back. Every battle had taken someone. Every victory had cost a piece of her soul. She reached out and touched one of the etched plaques. "Sergeant Reeves," she whispered, "you made it worth it." A soft chime sounded. Commander Reyes appeared in the doorway. "Ma'am, the Coalition Council requests a transmission." Holt sighed. "Of course they do." She straightened her uniform, masking the weariness in her face, and followed Reyes to the bridge. The holoscreen flickered to life, revealing the faces of the new Coalition Council, alien leaders representing dozens of worlds that had survived the Krith's reign. They looked fearful, reverent, and uncertain. The Thal elder Ulthura spoke first. Her golden eyes shimmered with emotion. "Admiral Holt, on behalf of all free races, we thank you. Without humanity, none of us would still live." Holt gave a slow nod. "You're welcome," she said simply. The Ireni ambassador leaned forward, glowing softly. "But we must ask, what will you do now?" Holt's gaze was steady. "We'll go home." Murmurs rippled through the council. "You'll just leave?" one asked. "After all this?" "Yes," Holt said. "We didn't come to rule, we came to stop the monsters." The room fell quiet. Ulthura's voice softened. "And if the monsters return?" Holt looked directly into the camera, her eyes as sharp as the stars. "Then we'll come back." For a moment, none of them spoke. The humans meant it, and everyone knew it. The transmission ended. Later, in the great hall of what remained of the Coalition's capital, Ulthura stood before a crowd of survivors. Soldiers, refugees, and children gathered to hear her speak. Her voice echoed through the rebuilt chamber. "Varlon Prime burns no more," she said, "but we will never forget what it took to see the stars again." Behind her, a great memorial flickered to life, not a statue, but a hologram. It showed the silhouette of a human soldier standing tall beneath a burning sky. No name, no face, just the image of defiance. "Some call them saviors," she said softly. "Others call them destroyers, but I call them what they are, a reminder." She paused, her voice trembling. "When hope dies, when we stand at the edge of extinction, we will remember that there are still those who will fight for the living, even if they must become monsters to do it." The crowd bowed their heads. A child, a young Thal with silver scales, whispered, "Will they ever come back?" Ulthura smiled sadly. "Only if we are foolish enough to need them again." Far from that hall at the edge of the galaxy, the human fleet gathered one last time. Hundreds of ships formed a silent armada, gray, scarred, and unyielding. The UNS Retribution stood at their center, her engines burning softly like a dying star. On the bridge, Holt looked out at the vastness of space. "All fleets accounted for?" she asked. Reyes nodded. Yes, ma'am, every ship ready for return jump. Good. Holt turned to her crew, faces she had fought beside for months, weary, hardened, but alive. You've done your duty, she said quietly. The galaxy will sleep tonight because of you. No one spoke, but they all felt it, the pride, the loss, the weight of what they had become. Set the course, Holt ordered. Earth. The word hung in the air like a prayer. As the fleet prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Across the galaxy, from hundreds of worlds, signals began to appear, messages from alien civilizations. Not pleas for help, not calls for surrender, thank yous. Simple words, sent in thousands of languages, blinking across the communication arrays of every human ship. Holt stared at the screen as one message appeared from Varlon Prime. You saved us. We will never forget the fire that burned for us. Reyes wiped her eyes. They fear us, but they also love us. Holt nodded slowly. Good, she said. Fear keeps them safe. Love makes them remember. Then softly she added, that's enough. When the fleet entered warp, the light of their engines filled the sky, streaks of silver and blue racing toward the black. The galaxy watched as they vanished one by one, leaving nothing behind but silence. For years afterward, no one saw a human again. No ship, no transmission, no voice. But their legend did not fade. A century later, the stories were still told. In every academy, young cadets studied the humans' tactics, the impossible battles they won, the empires they broke. In every nursery, children whispered the old warning. Never summon the humans, never make them angry. The galaxy had peace again, but it was a fragile peace, one built on memory. Sometimes, explorers claimed to see ghostly lights in the far reaches of space. Some swore they heard voices on dead frequencies, a calm, human tone saying, UNS Retribution standing by. No one ever found proof, but no one ever doubted it either. Because deep down, every species knew the truth. Humanity had not disappeared, they were watching, waiting. And somewhere in the quiet between galaxies, the Retribution drifted through the dark. Her engines glowed faintly, her hull scarred and ancient. Inside, lights flickered along empty halls. The ship was silent, but her systems were awake. A soft hum filled the bridge. A voice, artificial, human, whispered through the darkness. Monitoring complete, all signals nominal, awaiting orders. Then faintly from the intercom, a recording old but clear. Admiral Holt's voice. If you can hear this, remember what we stood for. We fought not for power, not for conquest, but so that no one would ever fear the dark again. If you must wake us, then let the stars burn bright one last time. The ship's lights pulsed once, as if in acknowledgement. Then slowly, the Retribution turned toward the stars, her engines igniting, her course set for the unknown. And so the galaxy lived in peace, balanced on the edge of myth and memory. The humans were gone, but their shadows stretched forever. For every tyrant who rose, for every empire that dreamed of war, a quiet fear remained that somewhere out there, the soldiers of Earth still waited. And if the galaxy ever forgot the cost of cruelty, if it ever let the weak fall again, then the silence would break once more. And the humans would return. Not as saviors, not as conquerors, but as the reckoning,